Welcome to another edition to the comic book flashback. I am Marvel's Cross 316, and we are looking at the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 63. This issue came out in August of 1968. Today's title is Wings in the Night. We look on the cover today. We have two Vultures. We have Blackie Drago here on the left, and then we have Adrian Toomes, the original Vulture, on the right with the Spider-Man logo. So what's going to happen when we see the return of the original Vulture? How did he survive? How did he survive? As we recall, back in issue number 48, we saw that Blackie Drago had tricked the original Vulture, and we also saw that because the original Vulture had gotten into an accident in the prison that they were at, he was on his deathbed. But how did the original Vulture survive that whole thing that went down in issue 48? We're going to find all that out here in this video here. So before we get started, go ahead and give this video a like, and let's go ahead and get started. As always, we need to give credit where credit is due. And so this issue is brought to you by Stan the Man Lee, who wrote this issue. We also have John Ringading Ramita doing the artwork. We also have Don Hero Heck doing the penciling as well. We have Mickey DeMeo on the inking, and last but not least, Sam Rosen on the lettering page. So, like I was saying, we had the return of Adrian Toomes, the original Vulture. How did he survive? We're going to find all this out here. So let's go ahead and get started right here. We start out the issue here. We have the original Vulture, Adrian Toomes, and he has been scheming. He's been planning this entire time to seek his revenge on Spider-Man, but also to make his revenge on Blackie Drago. Now, we recall back in issue 48 that we met Blackie Drago. He was the new Vulture, but he was defeated by Spider-Man when Blackie Drago teamed up with Kraven the Hunter in issue 49. Now let's see what our favorite webhead is up to right now. We see that it is pouring. I mean, it is raining cats and dogs. It is raining so hard. Spider-Man slips. He can't even web swing right now because it's raining so hard. And he falls on the ledge of this building here, and he lands right on top of his shoulder here. And so that's just not going to be good. So his shoulder is now injured, and he's going to be injured for the rest of the issue here. And when he finally comes to his senses, he thinks he saw a vulture or maybe a bird, but was that really the Vulture? And I believe that was the Vulture. And so Spider-Man thinks he's just dazed, he's confused, he's seeing things because of his injury. But that was, in fact, Adrian Toomes, the original Vulture. And the Vulture here learns that his original wings were on display in a museum, and he's the one that's going to break into this museum and steal his original wings. And so he attacks this guard here and then flies away with the stolen wings. So Spider-Man finally comes back to his apartment, the apartment that he's sharing with Harry Osborn, and he gets some rest here. He can't even get out of his costume because he's just so tired and his arm is throbbing. And we learn that he just cannot fall asleep. He's still thinking back a few issues back where he had that encounter with Gwen Stacy's dad. Gwen Stacy was there to encounter the whole scene, and so we have Gwen Stacy still angry at Peter Parker. He keeps thinking about Gwen Stacy. We see the next day Gwen Stacy won't even talk to Peter Parker, won't even acknowledge his existence. We see in class, he's looking at her, she's not paying him any attention, and then we see that the Professor Warren has to wake up Peter Parker from his daze as he's been looking at Gwen to give his oral report here in class. Class gets out, and Gwen Stacy walks away without even acknowledging Peter Parker. But We learn from her thoughts here that if only Peter Parker would confront her and tell her anything of any explanation, she would believe him. But Peter Parker can't do that without revealing his secret identity as Spider-Man. So now let's go to the prison here where Blackie Drago is at. And word on the street is that the original Vulture has returned from the dead because everybody believes that the original Vulture had died. And while everybody's talking to Blackie Drago, all of a sudden we see up in the sky the original Vulture swoops down and hands Blackie Drago his original costume. We see Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, he attacks these guards while Blackie Drago puts on the spare costume of the Vulture, and both men fly away from the scene. So Adrian Toomes has broken out, Blackie Drago out of prison here. So that's unique. Wonder why he did that. Well, let's go ahead and continue the story here. As the story progresses here, we see that also Harry Osborn receives a letter from Flash Thompson, and that Flash Thompson is now going to Vietnam to fight in the Vietnam War. So they're hoping that he'll be safe as he fights in that war, as the war is going on at this point in 1968. We also see that Peter Parker is just still down and about. He's still thinking about Gwen Stacy, and he's like, Harry, I don't even need to stay in this apartment now because you're pretty much paying for all the rent. But Harry Osborn says, no, you need to be here because you keep me company. Plus, my dad is the one that's paying our rent, not me. So we see that Peter Parker tries to phone Gwen one more time to see if he can talk with her. He gets her father on the phone, and so they're going to meet up next issue, it seems like, for a lunch, and we're wondering why Captain Stacy wants to talk with Peter Parker. Then all of a sudden we hear a knock on the door. So Peter Parker goes to open the door, and it's Harry Osborn's dad, Norman Osborn, as we know as the Green Goblin. He's still suffering from amnesia, and he keeps having these flashbacks from issue 40, as we see all these images of the Green Goblin and an unmasked Spider-Man. And so he just goes to Peter Parker and he says, all these images are haunting me. Peter Parker gets Harry involved, and so Harry tries to calm down Norman Osborn. So now, as we've seen in the past 2 issues, Norman Osborn is still being delirious. He keeps thinking back. He has these images in his head. So as the story progresses here, we're going to see in future issues how Norman Osborn is going to deal with the fact that maybe he might return as the dreaded arch enemy of Spider-Man, that is the Green Goblin. But that's more to look at in future issues. Now let's catch up with the 2 Vultures here as we learn here the backstory of how Adrian Toomes survived. We saw that he was on the deathbed. We saw how Blackie Drago tricked him in duping him to find out where Adrian Toomes had kept his original spare costume. And so we see that right from the get-go, Adrian Toomes is seeking revenge on Blackie Drago. He had the willpower to survive from his illness. During the prison break, when Blackie Drago broke out of prison by getting the wings that he needed, we see that Adrian Toomes attacked a guard, put on the guard's costume, and escaped from prison. And during all this time, we see that Adrian Toomes has been building and creating this new Vulture wings to help him finally seek his revenge, not only on Blackie Drago, but on Spider-Man. And so the reason why Adrian Toomes broke Blackie Drago out of prison is that he wants to fight Blackie Drago to a standstill to show who really deserves to be the Vulture. So right here, we're going to see just an awesome battle scene between 2 Vultures. We see Adrian Toomes, the original Vulture, and Blackie Drago. They're both going to be fighting up in the air. And so this is how Spider-Man is going to get involved here. As Peter Parker is walking down the street, he's headed towards the Daily Bugle, and he's still injured from his arm injury from earlier in the issue. And we see here that he's going to go see if the two Vultures will battle out, that the police will get involved. Hopefully Spider-Man doesn't get involved. But then we see that J. Jonah Jameson wants Peter Parker to take photos of both of these men fighting up in the air. So Peter Parker is going to do his job here while Jameson is with him. But all of a sudden we see this little boy, he's out looking about this scene here, and then they fall into this ledge where the little boy is at. So now the little boy is hanging on for dear life. So this is going to cause Peter Parker to change to Spider-Man because he has to save this little boy from falling to his death. So we see here that Spider-Man is going to come to the rescue, save this little boy, and this is how Adrian Toomes is going to see his arch enemy, Spider-Man. And so we see that the original Vulture is giving Blackie Drago a run for his money. It looks like Blackie Drago is going to be captured here by the police, but we end the issue here with the original Vulture swooping in for the kill on Spider-Man, and we see that Spider-Man's arm has grown numb. So what's going to happen next issue as we continue this issue? We ended on a cliffhanger here. What will happen as Spider-Man fights the original Vulture in issue number 64? We'll find all this out next issue. I hope to see you there. And until next time, keep reading comics.